You say you're done. You promise this time is different, but somehow you're still there, still answering the texts, still making excuses, still hoping, even though you know this relationship is slowly erasing you. But something deeper than logic is pulling you back. And until you face it, you'll keep mistaking the cage for connection. The truth is, you're not trapped by the person. You're trapped by what they awakened, by what the bond represents, by the version of yourself that still believes love is something you earn through suffering. Toxic relationships aren't just about manipulation and chaos. They're psychological loops, built on old wounds, primal fears, and invisible contracts. You're addicted to the feeling of being almost enough, and that's why leaving doesn't work. Not until you break the bond beneath it. Because if you don't, even distance becomes a lie. You'll still replay the memories, still justify the harm, still wonder, what if this? But it's never about this time. It's about the first time. The first time love felt unstable, inconsistent. The first time you learned love might come, but only after you prove yourself. That's conditioning. If love was modeled as unpredictable, warm one day, cold the next, your brain now associates uncertainty with desire. You mistake anxiety for intensity. So when someone is consistently kind, it feels fake. When they're stable, boring. But when they're hot and cold, when they flood you with affection then disappear, your nervous system lights up. Because it's familiar, not safe, familiar. That's the trap. You're in love with the hope that this time you'll be chosen, that this time rejection will turn into redemption. It's a loop that began long before this relationship. But here's where it turns deadly. Intermittent reinforcement, a psychological drug stronger than logic. Imagine this. A rat presses a lever and sometimes, randomly, it gets food. Not always, not predictably, but just often enough to stay obsessed. Now replace the rat with you and the lever with every maybe in your relationship. Maybe they'll change. Maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe if I try harder. These tiny moments of affection, the rare texts, the sudden warmth, the apologies wrapped in charm, are the rewards. And your brain gets hooked, not by love, by unpredictability. The longer you stay, the lower your standards sink. You begin accepting scraps. You rationalize red flags, and you call it patience, loyalty. But it's not. It's dependency. And just when you think you've had enough, they know. And they give you just enough to keep you hoping. But here's what no one tells you. Leaving a toxic relationship doesn't just mean walking away. It means grieving the illusion. It means facing the reality that the person you fell for never truly existed. That version of them, the one from the beginning, was the bait. What followed was the hook. And even when you're aware of the cycle, breaking it feels like death. Not because you love them, but because part of you still believes they complete you, that without them, you're nothing. That belief didn't start with them. It was seeded by 1,000 moments when you learned that love meant sacrifice, that being chosen meant disappearing, that survival meant shrinking. And now, you're not just trying to leave a person, you're trying to unlearn an identity. But the game gets dirtier, because just when you gather the strength to leave, they turn the narrative around. Suddenly, you're the problem. You're too sensitive. You misunderstood. You're imagining things. Gaslighting. It doesn't just distort facts, it dismantles reality. You start doubting your memory, you question your instincts, you wonder, am I overreacting? And when the truth becomes foggy, control becomes easy. Then comes projection, when their guilt becomes your burden. They lie and accuse you of dishonesty. They cheat and say you are the one pulling away. They rage and claim you provoke it. It's not conflict, it's psychological warfare. And if you stay long enough, you'll start to believe it. Because the more your self-esteem breaks, the more you seek validation from the very person breaking it. You forget who you are. You forget what you deserve. And the scariest part, you stop trusting yourself. You stop trusting your gut. Because every time it whispered something's wrong, they convinced you it was all in your head. And so you trade your intuition for their approval. You silence your instincts just to keep the peace. But that peace, it's the most expensive lie you'll ever buy. Toxic relationships don't just hurt you. They rewire you. They train your nervous system to fear calm. They make chaos feel like home. And in the quiet, in the stillness, you start to panic. Because without them, who are you? That's the damage. Not the fights, not the insults, but the identity theft. The way they hollow you out until you only exist in response to them. Until your moods depend on their attention. Until your worth is a reflection of their validation. And when you try to leave, really leave, they sense it. Because control doesn't like to be threatened. That's when the love bombing comes back. The apologies, the promises, the tears. But here's the truth. They're not sorry for what they did. They're sorry you're finally doing something about it. This is where the cycle repeats. And it doesn't matter how smart, strong, or self-aware you are. Because this isn't happening in your logic. It's happening in your trauma. You go back because your wounds are still louder than your boundaries. And until you heal them, the cycle will keep finding you. But healing doesn't start with cutting them off. It starts with remembering who you were before them. Before you were told that your needs were too much. Before you started apologizing for your own intuition. Before you learned that love meant being small. You don't need closure from them. You need clarity from yourself. You need to look at the moments you stayed, not to judge yourself, but to understand. To ask, what was I searching for in their chaos? What did I think they were completing in me? That's where the freedom begins. Because when you see the pattern, you can finally rewrite the script. And here's what that script sounds like. Love isn't adrenaline. Love isn't anxiety. Love isn't proving your worth over and over again. Love is calm. Love is steady. Love doesn't make you abandon yourself just to keep it. And real healing? It's not loud. It's not flashy. It's the quiet moment when you stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. It's the decision to protect your peace, even if it means being alone for a while. It's reclaiming your time, your energy, your space. Because the most toxic part of toxic love isn't them. It's who you have to become to survive it. And the moment you realize you no longer want to survive, you want to live, that's the moment the spell starts to break. You remember your voice. You remember your worth. You remember that you were never hard to love, just surrounded by people who made love conditional. And slowly, you rebuild. Piece by piece, you relearn how to trust your gut. You notice the red flags without excusing them. You stop romanticizing potential. You stop waiting for chaos to prove it's real. You don't become colder. You become clearer. And the clearer you get, the less tolerance you have for confusion dressed as chemistry, for apologies without accountability, for patterns wearing new faces. That's when you start attracting something different. Because you found someone better, but because you became someone who no longer settles. You outgrow the cycle, not with bitterness, but with boundaries. And you finally understand that wasn't love. That was survival. And now, you're done surviving. You're choosing truth over fantasy, peace over adrenaline, self-respect over validation. You're not running from love. You're just refusing to call suffering by its name ever again. And that decision, quiet, steady, unshakable, is the beginning of everything you thought love was supposed to be.